So now one of the very large policy impacts that you've probably heard much about are the work requirements, or you also hear them referred to as community engagement requirements. And so this requires individuals that are applying for Medicaid to meet at least 80 hours of qualifying activities in the month prior to applying. And so the important thing to note here is that they have to do it before they apply. So if someone isn't already working or already doing something to meet that requirement, we've got a very short window to be able to get them into something so that they could potentially qualify to make sure that that current stay is covered. This is something that was previously attempted to be implemented by several states, and only one, the state of Georgia, still has this in effect. And it was a very, very small group of people that are in their, operating under work requirements on their waiver. But this now is requiring this for the expansion population, which we know is far more people. So to talk a little bit more about what that looks like, qualifying activities, it could be work, it could be going to school, it could be volunteering, or a combination of any of those things. And so as you can imagine, if you have to verify that you're doing this, you have to provide some sort of verification to the state. There's not a single verification form or format that this is provided in. And generally the states don't have that either. They just require you to provide proof. And this is one of the areas, as partner, where we really step in when we've worked in places where they've had this before to help facilitate that for individuals, because just figuring out what they need to provide can certainly be a challenge. Now, the work requirements for that population won't apply to everyone in that group. There are some exemptions. And, one of the areas is if they do have children under the age of 14, or they're caring for disabled individuals, then they could be exempt. But generally when we're talking about the expansion population, part of why they're in that group is that they don't have children. If they're pregnant, or if they are participating in an unemployment program where they're doing the work training, things like that, they'll be exempt. SNAP and cash assistance benefits have already had this implemented. This was one of the other provisions of the bill for work requirements. Theirs went into place sooner than the Medicaid work requirements. So if in that state, the patient has already met the requirements for SNAP or food assistance, they actually don't have to meet it again. So they'll use that same requirement to show that they've met it. And then, if someone's disabled or if they're a Medicare recipient, really if they're over the age of 65, period, they're not going to be subject to the work requirements, because it's only for the 19 to 64 or 19 up to age 65 group that is under expansion. One of the other areas that they had in there as an exemption is medically frail. They did not define it in the bill. It's one of the things that's supposed to be given guidance when HHS releases that, hopefully soon to the states, so that they have additional detail about how this is supposed to be implemented. We're hoping from a provider endpoint that this is a little more expansive, because when we see people coming into either the hospital or into provider areas, that they're coming in generally because there's some need, and hopefully we can get that qualified there as an exemption. There already a optional hardship exemption that some states will opt in to leverage, and one is inpatient requirements, but these are temporary, because they're not long-term exemptions. You only get that while the patient is still in-house, and then they have 30 days to show that they did meet the requirement. So if you have a patient come in, they're self-pay, and you're applying for Medicaid, it won't keep them from being able to apply if they're inpatient, but it will keep them from keeping their coverage, because if after they discharge, if they don't provide that proof of work requirement, then they will lose it. Another piece is just someone's the victim of some sort of national disaster or declared federal emergency, they can get temporary exemptions for that. And then places where there's high unemployment, where the jobs aren't an option, if they're over a certain rate, having an exemption there, or if you're outside, if the person is traveling and not in their home community for a lengthy time, they can have some exemption during that period as well.